In this video, I'm looking at the Hungering Parasite Rivals deck. Hello AOS fans, Robin here, and I'm back with a new video for you all about Wintermaw and specifically the Hungering Parasite Rivals deck. Those of us who inhabit Underworlds land, or the Underworlds I suppose we should call it, will know there's been a deluge of releases in the past few weeks. We've got Underworlds releases coming out of our ears, and there's yet more with Wintermaw arriving far sooner than anybody expected. Far sooner than Pete and I expected, and we're not quite on top of it yet, unfortunately, so I'm doing this solo. I'm definitely going to be... This video is devoted to the Hungering Parasite deck. Hopefully I'll have time to record something about the other deck, which is called the Rhineworm's Bite. They are two of the most exciting Rivals decks we've seen, I think, and I'm really interested to dive into them. Those of you who watch us a lot will know that Pete and I aren't super competitive, so although I think these are really interesting, I suspect there's quite a lot of tech and capabilities in here that I haven't really quite appreciated. So do feel free in the comments below if there's things I've missed, or you can see great opportunities for these decks. I think they're really interesting, as I've said, and I'm looking forward to playing them. They are, I would say, two of the most control-y decks we've seen so far. I remember having a talk with John Bracken a long time ago about control decks, and he said they're really hard to make, and GW have tended to shy away from them, because the problem with a control deck, as you may well be aware, is that you can end up with quite a negative player experience. For those of you who can remember as far back as the Relic times or the Monarch Toads, you could be just basically not able to do anything while your opponent just farmed glory, which is no fun for anybody. I don't think these decks are going to fall into that trap. These decks really show an enhanced experience in the product that they're building and the game that they're designing, and I think it's really great. I have to say, generally, since the sort of Nethermaze, Harrowdeep days, we've gradually seen an increase in the complexity and intricacy of the game, but not for the sake of it, I think. I think it is improving how the game works, and it is improving the experience for all of us who are playing. So with that said, let's have a dive in onto the Hungering Parasite deck. Well, the most exciting thing about the Hungering Parasite deck is probably not only do you get a plot card, but you also get an upgrade that goes with it. So the plot card reads, when using cards from the Hungering Parasite deck, show this card to your opponent in the reveal your warband step, and these rules are used in the game, same as usual. After deploying your warband, give one friendly fighter one Bane of Heroes upgrade. Do not spend any glory points when you give the Bane of Heroes upgrade to a fighter. When a fighter that has one or more Bane of hero upgrades is taken out of action, break those upgrades. So basically, you give the upgrade to a fighter, and when they're killed, it's broken. In an Inspire step, if your Bane of Heroes upgrade is in your power discard pile, or after it's been broken, give that upgrade to a friendly fighter, or, and this is the interesting bit, an enemy fighter that is adjacent to one or more friendly fighters. So we haven't seen too many of this type of card versus sort of free upgrade. We haven't seen too many of those in Underworlds, and then it's one that can be manipulated onto your own fighters and your opponent's fighters. Now, you might, as you expect, a lot of the cards are keyed around doing things with this Bane of Heroes upgrade, and particularly the objectives. I think they're all keyed around the Bane of Heroes upgrade, and there's going to be some really interesting interactions and really interesting things you can do with it. So let's dive in and have a look. So what does this upgrade do that you're going to give to one of your fighters? Very important question that I nearly forgot to tell you. It can only be used as described on the plot card and cannot be included into or added to any decks. Fighters are staggered within one hex of this fighter. The fighter is uninspired and cannot be inspired, so while you've got this on you, you can't be inspired, and you can use it if you put it on your opponent's fighters, so you can use it to uninspire them, which can be pretty nasty, especially if it's like a one-off inspire mechanic and they kind of missed the loop. At the end of an action phase, this fighter chooses a fighter with one hex of this fighter. Deal 1 damage to the chosen fighter. So that is pretty strong as well. So you've got a little bit of, depending on where you are, get up there into danger, and you could do some damage to your opponent. Similarly, if your opponent runs away from you on your own, you've got to choose yourself, because it is within one hex of this fighter, so you can choose the fighter yourself. I don't know why you might want to do that. You could choose a fighter and kill him, break the upgrade so you can move it. I'm not sure you'd want to do that, but you've got options there. So that is the Bane of Heroes upgrade. Really interesting. You can already see how this is going to start and how it's going to move. So let's have a look at the objectives. And I've broken them down into objectives that can be scored with any fighter, and then objectives that can be scored with your fighters, and then objectives that can be scored with enemy fighters. And we'll talk about those as we go along. So we'll start with the objectives that can be given to any fighter, starting with Thwarted Destiny, which is a surge card and a hybrid. Score this immediately after an Inspire step if you gave your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade to an Inspire fighter in that step. So basically if it was in your discard pile and you gave it to somebody, or that fighter has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade was taken out of action. So if you've killed somebody in your turn, or maybe your opponent has killed you, you can score this. So basically putting on any fighter or any fighter dying with it on, and you score that. Temporary Reprieve. Score this immediately after an activation in which your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade was broken. So you'll see the wording there is very common throughout the whole of the cards. It's when your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. Obviously you could both be playing this and there'd be Bane of Heroes going left, right and centre, which could get really interesting. But specifically your Bane of Heroes upgrade was broken. So you basically score that as soon as, if somebody is taken out of action with your Bane of Heroes upgrade on it, you score that card. Seek the Cure. This is not running around the Wintermaw looking for Robert Smith. This is an entirely different thing. You basically score this immediately after an activation step if the fighter has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade is holding an objective. So if you're on an objective and that fighter has 2 or more move tokens. This one seems quite hard to score, and although you can score it with your opponent's fighters, it'd be quite difficult to rely on your opponent getting multiple move counters. I don't remember there being any upgrades or Ploys that could help you with that, but yeah, that seems like quite a tricky one. Again, it's only 1 glory. Driven by the Curse. Score this immediately after an activation step in which your fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade made a successful attack action. So basically just hit something while you've got the Bane of Upgrades on. Bane of Upgrade, Bane of Heroes upgrade on. Deadly Influence. Score this immediately after an activation step in which the fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade was staggered or dealt damage by a lethal hex. So the phrase "through a lethal hex" might suddenly be returning to the game of Underworlds, and there suddenly is a reason to choose lethal hexes on the board. Obviously, equally, you might be able to stagger people. Yeah, so there might be ways to stagger you as well, but running through a lethal hex, that will score you Deadly Influence. And the Clutches of Evil, which is score this immediately after activation step if an enemy fighter has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. So yeah, so this one you have to score when you put it on your opponent. So that one is an enemy fighter Warband. So these ones are all more or less any fighter, and this one is for enemy fighters only. The non-surges. So we've got some 2s here. We've got 4 2s and 2 1s. So that tells me that's 10. So you've got 16 glory altogether in the deck, which isn't too bad. It's not too shabby. We have got Beyond Exhausted. Score this in an end phase if the fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade has 1 or more move and or charge tokens. This very much is in your control. Once you can move your own fighter as long as he's not killed. Similarly, you can maybe pop the Bane of Heroes upgrade onto a fighter who's already charged, and you're probably going to score Beyond Exhausted. Cursed Tyrant. Score this in an end phase if a friendly fighter has 4 or more upgrades, and 1 or more of those upgrades is a Bane of Heroes upgrade. So you can't score that. I think originally I thought you could score that with your enemy fighter. If your enemy had a Voltron fighter, you could actually score this. But unfortunately you can't. It has to be your own fighter. So that does encourage the Voltron meta a little bit, which is a bit of a shame. So that one actually is a friendly fighter. I've got that in the wrong pile. That's a friendly fighter, whereas most of these, again, are any fighter. So far and wide, score this in end phase if the fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade is holding an objective. So again, if your opponent's just moved on to an objective and you can somehow move it onto them, then so much the better. If the objective is in enemy territory, gain 1 additional glory point. So, you could be scoring against those Sepulchral Guard who are holding everything. You could run up, pop it on, and that would be 2 glory. Thank you very much. So I've got my notes completely out of order here, so bear with me. But this one is a Bane's Triumph. A friendly fighter with your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade is in enemy territory. So if you charge into enemy territory and there are no other friendly fighters in that territory. So a high risk reward there, that's worth 2 Bane's Triumph. You do need the Bane of Heroes upgrade. That can be on any of your fighters, but not your opponent's fighters. We have Powerful Pawn, which is a leader card. Score this in an end phase if an enemy leader has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade, or a friendly leader in enemy territory has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. Could tie in quite nicely with Bane's Triumph there, the second part, so you could get 4 if you end of turn charge your Bane of Hero leader into enemy territory. Not necessarily the safest thing to do, but a possibly good way of scoring 4 glory. This one is for enemy fighters. Score this in an end phase if there are more surviving friendly fighters than surviving enemy fighters, and an enemy fighter has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. So you do, you know, there are more surviving friendly fighters than surviving enemies, a fairly standard mechanic. We've seen that quite a lot. But their problem now adds, they've got one of them's got to have the Bane of Heroes upgrade, one of the enemy fighters. So you can't score that if you've killed everybody. So they are the objectives, quite an interesting set of objectives there. Let's have a look what the power cards are to support them. So we'll start with the Gambits. There are 3 cards that can break your Bane of Heroes upgrade. We have a Curse Divided. Choose a fighter that has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades that is adjacent to 1 or more fighters. Break that fighter's Bane of Heroes upgrades. So that's fairly standard. You can just choose a fighter with it and break it and then move it about that way. Lure of Power. Choose a fighter that has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades that is on an objective. Break that fighter's Bane of Heroes upgrades. So slightly less easy to use maybe than a Curse Divided, but still, yeah, possibly going to happen. And then Opportunistic Leech. Play this after a fighter ends a move action adjacent to the fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. Break your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. So yeah, after you've you can basically move adjacent to them and break it, or not. You can, or the enemy can move their fighter adjacent to it, and you know, thinking, oh, I'm going to kill their Bane of Heroes upgrade guy, and you switch it away, and you can bring it back in the next Inspire step. And then there are 3 cards called the Curse something. So we have the Curse Demands. Choose a fighter that has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades and push them 1 hex. Push tech, always really strong. The Curse Empowers. The first range 1 or range 2 attack action in the next activation step made by a friendly fighter has Grievous 1. You get +1 damage to the first attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation instead, if they have 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades. I'm not sure about this card. I mean, it's okay. This seems to be where they're moving. They're giving people Grievous with the possible option of getting +1 strength. But it's not very strong, and I tended to shy away from these cards anyway when they were +1 damage for a ploy, because if you miss, the ploy is done, which is, you know, it's completely wasted. Finally, you've got the Curse Hungers, which is it's a reaction. Play this during a friendly fighter's attack action after the defense roll. If the attack action would fail, the combat sequence ends and that fighter makes an attack action that must target the same enemy fighter. Large fighters and or fighters that do not have 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades cannot use this reaction. So we've seen this card quite a lot. I think the Gits have one, and various warbands have them, where if you miss, you can make another attack action. This one is the same as that, but you have to either be you have to have a Bane of upgrades, Heroes upgrade. So again, not as good as we've seen in previous incarnations. Potentially good if your Bane of Heroes fighter does miss a vital attack. 4 left then, 2 of which are used for any fighter and 2 of which are used for friendly fighters. So the friendly fighting cards, play this is Tempting Lure. Play this after a fighter's move action. Choose a friendly fighter, push the chosen fighter 1 hex closer to that fighter. If the fighter made the move action has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades, push the chosen fighter up to 3 hexes. So you've got a it's a little bit of push tech, and potentially quite strong push tech if you have got the Bane of Heroes upgrade on. Sudden Swap, which enables you to swap a friendly fighter with another friendly fighter that has the Bane of Heroes upgrade. Could be really strong in certain circumstances. So you choose 2 friendly fighters. If one fighter has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade, you can remove each chosen fighter from the battlefield, then place each fighter in the hex the other fighter occupied when you chose them. So you could get somebody out of dodge, or you could bring your Bane of Heroes into dodge, depending on what you want to do. Could be really strong. Those cards, though, sometimes you end up thinking, oh, that'd be really, really useful, and then end up, well, I don't know if I want to play it yet. Be interested to see. I'm sure there's some good uses for that card. Malefic Siphon. Choose the fighter with your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade, heal 1 the chosen fighter, then choose another fighter within 3 hexes of that fighter, deal 1 damage to the other chosen fighter. Now, I'll put this in the any fighters category. Probably you would only ever play this on your own fighter, even though it can be played on any fighter, so you'd heal them 1 and then do 1 damage elsewhere. Maybe you might want to try and heal your opponent and then kill somebody in the backfield or something if they're hiding with a strong fighter, hiding for some reason with 1 wound. Not sure, but more than likely, when you've taken a bit of damage, you're going to heal it up and deal a bit of damage back, which is quite nice. And then finally, we've got the Pulse of Hunger. Choose a fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade, so any fighter. Roll a magic dice, any fighter with the upgrade obviously, roll a magic dice for each fighter within 1 hex of the chosen fighter. On a roll of a crit, deal 1 damage to that fighter, otherwise stagger that fighter. So, Interesting one, that one. It does say roll a dice for each fighter within 1 hex. So I assume that's himself. So you could end up being damaged or staggering here, which would score you that card for having a stagger fighter with your Bane of Heroes upgrade. So no, it's not super strong. You do have to roll crits. You do have to be in a situation where you're adjacent to lots of fighters, so you're putting yourself in danger. But a host of staggering is pretty good, even if you don't get any crits off to do any damage. So a little look at the upgrades now. Weakened Soul is an interesting card, and it can be given to enemy fighters. It's -1 wounds to a minimum of 1. This upgrade cannot be given to a fighter that does not have 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades. So you have to, you can transfer it to your opponent and then give them, give them this card. And it could be, if they're playing that, if in a mirror match, you can also give it to your opponent as well on their own Bane of Heroes upgrade. After the fighter is given the Bane of Heroes upgrade, give that fighter this upgrade. Do not spend any glory points to do so. There's a reaction. So if you've got it in your hand and you transfer it, you can just immediately give them to without spending any points. And it's -1 wounds to a minimum of 1. And sometimes that can be horrible. Now here's something we haven't seen very often in Warhammer Underworlds. It's cards that interact with the barge or stun action. If this fighter has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades, this fighter has the flying trait. Okay, well that has uses, an upgrade. Fury Bound Leaps. Reaction. Use this after a fighter makes a barge super action. Remove 1 of this fighter's move tokens. So this is potentially useful because you can, don't very often make barge actions because they seem like a bit of a waste of time. But in theory, you could, barge somebody to stun them, and then, you can then remove the move token, so you can then do something else next turn. You can charge potentially next turn if you wanted to, or something like that. So I'm not sure how great it is, but it is an interesting interaction with the barge keyword. Frenetic Efforts interacts with the stun action. Use this after the fighter makes a stun action. Push this fighter 1 hex. After that push, this fighter is holding 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades. This fighter makes a range 1 attack action. So again, this could be quite strong if you're in a position where you can make the stun. And then you basically can push them and then make an attack. So you can stun them, push the fighter into a better position, and then attack with the fighter you've just staggered. It doesn't even have to be against the same fighter. Potentially, if you can push round, I don't know. But you've got options there for frenetic efforts. Tenacious Resilience is an interesting card. It's an upgrade again, obviously because these are all upgrades, but it's a reaction. You can use this after you give this upgrade to a fighter that has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades. Break this fighter's Bane of Heroes upgrade. So you basically can put this on to move the Bane of Heroes upgrade around to somewhere else if you want to. When this fighter is given a Bane of Heroes upgrade, heal 2 this fighter, then break this card. If the fighter is large, then heal 1 this fighter instead, then break this card. So if you remember the days when you would spend a long time trying to chip away damage at large fighters and then they'd heal it back up again, these days are gone. And so the GW very carefully to make sure you can never heal large fighters too much, but potentially a bit of double healing there, very nice. Careful Aim is basically it enables you to re-roll 1 attack dice in this fighter's attack rolls if the target has 2 or more wound counter. So not always going to be useful, but if you're chipping away damage, then maybe you might want to use Careful Aim. If the target of this fighter's attack action has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades, you add 1 dice to the attacks. Wicked Aim is a bonkers card. You can't give it to a large fighter. It cannot affect scything attack actions. You get +1 range to this fighter's attack actions. +2 to this fighter's attack action range into this fighter's attack actions if this fighter has a Bane of Heroes upgrade. After the fighter makes a range 4+ attack action, break this card. So potentially you can take up your attack actions to your range 3 attack action up to something horrendous. If you've got like a fighter with 3 hammers, 3 damage attack action, you can give them +2 range, which is a bit terrifying, and that wouldn't break the card either. So that's Wicked Aim, a terrifying prospect. Despairing Strength. I've seen this this continues off of what I was saying about Grievous becoming more into the game, into adding to do damage. This fighter's range 1 attack actions have Grievous. If the fighter has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades, +1 damage. So it's effectively, Despairing Strength is basically great strength, but with slightly watered down unless you have the Bane of Heroes upgrade on. Instinctive Reprisal. Interesting card again. Use this during an enemy's fighter's successful attack action that target this fighter after the deal damage step. If the attacker is adjacent to this fighter, deal 1 damage to the attacker. If this fighter has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades cards, roll 1 attack dice. On a roll of a hammer, you can deal 2 damage instead. So yeah, so again, it's like a little bit of damage back, which is quite nice, and potentially 2 damage back if you've got the Bane of Heroes upgrade on. So, and it's an upgrade so people can see it, so they know what to expect. It's not super strong, but it's nice. Divine Fortitude, an interesting card, kind of messes with the Bane of Heroes stuff a little bit. This fighter cannot be dealt damage by a Bane of Heroes upgrade. Reaction, use this after you give this upgrade to a fighter that has one or more Bane of Heroes upgrades. Break this fighter's Bane of Heroes upgrades, then inspire that fighter. So if you have for some reason been stopped from inspiring, or you're not inspired, you can give them this, break the Bane of Heroes upgrade and inspire them. And also while you've got it on, you can't be dealt damage by it, which is quite nice. So that's useful in a situation where you have put the Bane of Heroes on your opponent's fighter. They then can't attack or can't damage your own fighter, one of your fighters, with the inherent Bane of Heroes damage. And the last card is Stolen Vigor. Use this after this fighter's second or subsequent activation in a phase. Remove one of this fighter's move tokens. If the fighter has one or more Bane of Heroes upgrades, you can remove one of this fighter's charge tokens instead. If you do, break this card. So removing charge tokens is pretty huge. MacLeod loves this card. All the big guys love that card. And yeah, it's a good card. Of course, you have got to have the Bane of Heroes upgrade on you to really get the benefit of it. And that says pretty much everything about this deck. You have lots of cards which do really quite nice effects, but you have to have that Bane of Heroes upgrade on the fighter in question that you want to do it to. So it's all going to be about controlling where the Bane of Heroes goes, trying to keep the fighter alive when you want them to, trying to transfer it when you want it somewhere else, maybe giving it to your opponent when they're standing on an objective, and you want to basically use their positioning to gain you glory. And that's why this deck is so interesting, I think. It's not quite as strong as when I first read it. I was like, oh my god, I misread a couple of cards like we all do, or certainly I do. And I thought, there's some really good, strong stuff here. I thought maybe you could get glory from your opponent's Voltron, but you can't. But it's got real potential for just kind of piggybacking on the back of what your opponent is doing. So unlike a lot of control decks where it's about stopping what your opponent's doing, here you don't want to stop them, but they're going to be scoring glory while you score glory. And then it's about maybe trying to use your Bane of Heroes then to try and grind them into the dust, stagger them, do a little ping damage here, a little ping damage there. I think it's got a really lot of potential. It seems similar to me in balance to the Void Curse deck, which has been quite good for some of the older warbands. Not sure whether this will be. I haven't quite worked out what a good deck to pair this would be. I kind of want to try it with the Condemners, because I always think these sort of decks, the Condemners ought to come out and wreck face. But we'll have to see. I kind of also like the idea of MacLeod with a big Parasite on his head. I want to try and find like a squishy child's octopus toy to squash on the model when it's got the Bane of Heroes upgrade on it. That is the deck. What do you think? I think it's really interesting, and I think, like I say, it's really moved the game in an interesting direction. And combined with the Rhymeworm Bite, I think we're going to see a lot of changes to the game. And I'm really interested to see how the meta is going to evolve in the next 3 to 6 months. So I hope you enjoyed this. Do like and subscribe. If you did, please comment below if I've made any textual errors. I quite often do. Haven't had these cards very long, as you know. But let me know what you're looking forward to. Let me know who you're going to pair it with. And yeah, Pete and I will see you somewhere in the Wintermaw.